Hi everybody, I am Donna Reed. I'm in the Cactus Lounge this morning in Tucson. I traveled in Up With People in 1976, Cast A, and this is actually part two of an interview with those who helped the formation or started or were in charge of responsible for what we now know as the Up With People International Alumni Association. And if you're joining us and watching this and you haven't seen part one, find part one and start there. Because we are gonna start around 1987. And Mark, during our break, you talked about a story you'd like to share.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it brief. It was a monumental moment for me, but I realized for the Up With People and its Alumni Association in October, late October of 1987, after a lot of work was done, the senior management and this small ad hoc committee of John and Duffy Bledsoe, Bruce Wiley, Sam Lanham, we met at the Ventana Lowe's Ventana Canyon Resort in a small meeting room there, and it was sort of a neutral ground where everybody could be together, but we signed this sort of document of intent. The board of directors had given the go-ahead for senior management to do that. Jim McLennan, Steve Woods, Dale Penny, Chris Busey were all there as well. And signing this was really an important thing because it showed that we trust each other to go forward. A lot of work to get to that point, but when I look back, even myself was wondering, does it need to be an independent organization? But I can say, we have the benefit of the future to look back and realize how important that was, because when 2000 hit and Up With People had to close its operation, thank goodness that we had an independent alumni association that never stopped. As a matter of fact, they just got going even more. Thanks to Stu Shepard, I remember he was chair of that board, and Brenda Moran and many others kept the lights on, they kept the spirit going, the flame going, because then however many years later, and the reunions were really important to keep the spirit going, because when Up With People was ready to get going again with the program, they had alumni to send their kids to, and all three of our children traveled and benefited from the organization, thanks to the Up With People International Alumni Association. They had this benefit, and then we alumni ended up sponsoring because we needed somebody to buy into it, and that's what got Up With People going again. And I do believe that the International Alumni Association is what's going to keep the flame going now. Yeah. And I'm hopeful about the future, because whether it's our kids or the kids of our kids, they're the ones that are going to make a difference in the world through whatever that's going to be. Holy detachment. I don't know what it is, but I'm just really grateful for all that. But back to 1987, I was fortunate to get back on being the cast director, office-based cast director. The real hard work took place on the details, and that's when I'm going to throw a softball with Jerry. He did the hard work following me as director of alumni.
So that's what you were, then you became director of alumni for Up With People?
From the people.
Okay.
It was still very complicated, and there was still a lot of negotiating that was going on and how this was going to proceed. And one of the elements that was interesting, wasn't a side note, it was actually a very big element, was Up With People's 25th anniversary was coming. And so the initiative of starting the Alumni Association, getting all those pieces put together, which John talked about, and the board of directors of Up With People saying, no, we don't want this to be independent, we don't want it to proceed. The management of Up With People had its challenges with the idea that it was independent, wanted to be independent as well. So getting that to move forward, which happened in 87, the agreement, then in 88 was when all the components of getting the 501c3 completed, which Sam Lanham, as John mentioned, an attorney, longtime Up With People supporter, and had been involved from almost the beginning in 68 with Up With People. So he was a key person in making all the pieces come together. And so I was kind of the facilitator between Up With People and working with John, Duffy, Sam principally, as they were the sort of the co-chairs of the ad hoc committee as it still existed before we got into the actual board of Board of Governors from the people. So it was a very interesting time. And with the sort of the idea of the 25th
Was that
celebration.
Denver or Vail? Because I feel
Denver.
like I was in both places. Was there
Denver.
something that happened?
No, it was all
It was
Denver.
Maybe I just went to Vail.
Well, there was a
There
big
was-
thing in Breckenridge
Yeah, there was a
before.
big thing in
Breckenridge. But Denver was, well, it was 1990.
Yeah.
And so in '89, we actually started searching, finding for the location, and had all these cities bidding. And so that was an interesting part of what came out of people's, and the Alumni Association's negotiations to come together. Was, because it was a great, I think, John, you can say that there was an interest of, let's check my phone.
Turn off your cell phones.
An interest in Sing Out having its own reunion, not just Silver Creek, but another reunion in and around, following separate from other people. So, and I think this is another place where John took great leadership in trying, in working and knowing that it was important for the healing that you talked about being sort of consummated, if you will, to be part of a joint 25th anniversary celebration. So there were a lot of moving pieces as that was all coming forward, but it was a tremendous amount of work in getting 501c3, get that done, and then creating the statutes, the Alumni Association and the bylaws, and how long people served and how they did all the stuff, and so it was quite an experience. So, and I didn't have any experience in doing any of that either.
Yeah, so I want to interject here. So I traveled 1 year only, you guys, and then I put costumes on some people in 78, 79, and 80. And one of my memories is making jokes. I'm super sarcastic and making a joke with Paul Johnson and Lynn and Ralph in the costume room at the U of A about the Roaring '20s costumes. And they all just looked at me. And I said, well, it was a joke, but none of them got my joke. And I remember talking to Ralph about it a number of years ago. And he said, no, I was talking to Paul about it. And Paul goes, I'll bet Ralph forgave you. But as an alumni who only traveled 1 year from a small town in Ohio, I feel fortunate that I served then on that Board of Governors, because I was the second half of the bicentennial, which meant Texas for like 3 months, for me.
Good times.
Yeah. And the Board of Governors allowed me to get to know people from all generations and from many other places. And I had met Pat because she was from Toledo, so we had known that, but I met Brenda through the board. By the way, Miranda's sitting over here. She's not on camera. We keep alluding to her.
She's in charge.
She's in charge, yeah. So, for me, I think as this small town girl, and Brenda and I were talking a little bit this morning about our alumni base. Everybody's a volunteer. Everybody that does anything on the IAA is a volunteer, right? And so when we would physically go to meetings, because nobody was doing Zoom back,
Didn't exist.
and didn't exist, it was out of our own pockets and our own heart to go and give. And there was an evolution in who is needed on the board, and what are those roles, and do they need to be at every meeting, and how does that work? And sometimes with alumni, I think, if you've never thrown a party for a lot of people, you don't know what's involved in throwing a party for a lot of people. If you've never started an organization that's an international organization with people who, oh, by the way, move a lot and are all over the world, you don't have any idea of the work involved. And everybody here has been part of that work. And for those of you that don't know, the presidents on the Board of Governors, I can't even speak to it directly. 2 years, 4 years? How long are the terms?
When we started, it was a 1 year term, and then we realized that we needed the continuity, so it became a 2 year term.
A 2-year term.
For the president.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and the other thing that happened, instead of me being on the board forever, the president of the association automatically went on the Upward People board.
Oh.
And that was a very
Big deal.
big deal.
Well,
So
and it was-
at
and
the
it
same
was-
time that you were serving on the Board of Governors, then you were
also-
on the, oh, okay.
And then the past president of the Alumni Association had another year on the board. So there was a real continuity of alumni representation, because as John alluded to earlier, John was one of the only alumni on the board. But then as the Alumni Association was represented on the board of directors, because of the bylaws of both Upward People and the Board of Governors, then that became a much more integral component. And I think in the later years, there's been a huge number of alumni, almost all alumni, on the Board of Directors for Upward People. So it was a great revolution at bringing very experienced, accomplished alumni back into the organization in a leadership role on the Board of Directors. So that was never intended, but it happened. I think that goes to John's point earlier of saying how much he recognized how much talent was out there that was totally untapped and not engaging with Upward People, not supporting Upward People because they didn't feel invited, they didn't feel included. So this was that door that allowed a lot of people to have the opportunity to find a way to both support alumni each other, their casts, as well as Upward People.
Yeah. It's interesting to me now, so I'll soon be at my 50th reunion, and not this year, next year. I remember thinking those people were so old.
Yeah, well, this is my year is my 60th, so I don't want to hear about it.
And do I understand that group is gonna meet in Santa Fe in May? I was talking to Steve
Yeah,
Caldwell.
there's Baylin and Jean Coca and Diana Hanloser, they're all working, and Jeannie Powell, they're put together for early May in Santa Fe.
Nice.
We'll see, I just met with 2 of them in Santa Fe yesterday, they got a long ways to go.
It is, so Brenda and I were talking about, what did you call the mini meets, like when you meet up with some of your cast members?
We call them tweeners or
Tweeners.
mini
Tweeners.
reunions.
So in addition to the reunions that take place, that are sponsored by the Alumni Association, as the years go by and you realize how close you have been, I get emotional too. These are like my best friends in the world, you know? And so if I can see them randomly a couple times a year, that group of 5 or 15 or whatever they are, I don't know that there's any college association that's quite the same, you know, as the heart-driven pieces that we have. I always tell people who don't know, it felt like camp for a year. And I remember leaving camp and I would go home and I was never going to forget those people after 1 week. And then after a year, like, what was their last name? But that doesn't happen with Upward People.
And I think that's one of the reasons, as John was talking about, and Pat knows this because of their own personal experience, when Upward People in those early days did not acknowledge or recognize Sing Out 65 through 68, where all those people traveled and worked their tails off, students and staff, and there was no compensation for all those people, that it was just strictly heart and commitment, a commitment to a movement, as it were, which really had to do with Blanton's leadership in saying, we want to bring people together across borders, et cetera, the very mission of Upward People. Everybody believed in that. So in 68, when Upward People incorporated as Upward People, and that door shut, there was a lot of resentment, understandably, as John was saying. And to bridge that resentment, to get to a point of agreement and coming together, which took a long time. And I think moving that forward the 25th anniversary was a huge step.
Yeah.
Because then publicly, in front of everybody there, one of the things that was key and critical in bringing the whole thing together was the acknowledgement and recognition of 65 to 68 from Mr. Belk and all of anybody, the board, everybody who was part of it. And that was a very significant and important step, was trying to facilitate that healing, speed that healing to bring them closer together.
Well, one of the key parts of that was there with the recognition of John, Sarah, and Rusty.
Rusty, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
John, Sarah, and Rusty Wales were both two-time Olympians in rowing, amazing human beings. Rusty worked for other people for many, many years as the treasurer and comptroller, and they were key in the starting of Sing Out and everything, because they had such prowess. They were huge men among other things, but they just carried a lot of weight because they had just won 2 Olympic medals back to back. So pretty amazing.
In my photo album, with those faded photos, I think Rusty's one of the first pictures in that book, because he was speaking, when we were all in the gym.
Oh, yeah.
He and Mo Udall was also there that day. As we think about the future, some of you, I know that at least Pat and Brenda were in Ireland last year, so the Alumni Association continues to evolve, right? And communication takes place electronically. A lot of times it's very different than the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s, right? And there are times I feel really old with all of this. But I heard great things about what happened in Ireland. Now, I know Pat and Brenda were there. Were any of the others of you in Ireland?
I am.
Pat, can you just speak to that at all, related to a reunion in Europe for the first time in...
I was absolutely elated at how many people chose to participate in Ireland last year. Maybe it was the draw of Ireland, but the Irish alumni just did so much to be sure that people knew that this was going to be an amazing event, and it was.
I've heard great things.
So many opportunities, the family outings, the focus on Cast T and K and their whole experience.
Northern Ireland, wasn't there a day trip that you could go
Yes,
up to Northern Ireland?
there was a study group actually that spent several days in Northern Ireland. It just reinforced the fact that we are an international organization.
Uh-huh.
And sometimes you get, the America thing in your head, but there were people from everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And the feeling was, the energy was percolating, and we had fun, and we had insightful moments, and we had tearful moments, and it was a reunion. And I hope that a lot of people go again this coming year, because it's a totally different experience.
Right.
And
right.
Yeah, Brenda and I were a little immersed in conducting a silent auction.
Silent auction, yeah.
But we did have some opportunities to really mingle in, and then of course Ireland is.
Well, and cast people traveled together afterwards.
Yes.
This group went there, and I kept seeing pictures, and you're like, oh yeah, we're doing this, or beforehand they had something beforehand.
Yes.
I'm gonna jump to a different topic real quick, because I am on the board for the Reach Out Alumni Association, Ron.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know what that is a separate nonprofit to help alumni who need help. And there's representative from every generation and of decade of up with whatever, 60s, 70s, 80s. We have, but 2 of the people that started it from that 65 to 70 group are still on that board. And like everything, I just learned a week ago, Saturday, a week ago, about the startings of that, and how it started with someone giving $5,000. And I want to encourage people for that because the need is great. From people who don't have health insurance to people that just, we now have probably working on an application for people who have had fires or hurricanes, who may not have lost their property, but maybe lost their job. So we're looking to do some metamorphosis related to that. And as we age, there is more need. And so if anybody is interested in the Reach Out Alumni Association, I think that, you know, it would be great to find out more. I don't know how much time we have left, but I want to ask real quickly, if there's anything that you all would want to say about what a future might look like for Up With People, or if there's something from your, John, you should see the look on your face. And whether it's Up With
You don't
People.
wanna ask me that question.
Okay. I mean, I have no idea what will come. I think, you know, Pat, at the very beginning, you said you got called Blackberry. Jokingly, you know, but I think as a child who's at the very end of the baby boomer generation, that thinking about what we're experiencing in our world, I thought we were done with it. I thought we were over this after like Vietnam, so the fact that we are still living in a world where people don't feel safe to be who they are, that people of different ethnicity or skin color don't feel safe, that people who have moved to our country however many years ago might get sent home. I just think that Up With People and these people and these thoughts are needed as much now as they were in the 60s.
And the thing is, I love Up With People. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be who I am if it weren't for Up With People. But I don't know that it has a role in the future the way we know it. But the alumni will always be there.
Yeah.
And the alumni will continue to spread that joy, that hope, that yearning about a world that people can all feel safe. And yes, a few select friends were allowed to call me Blackberry, but it was a safe environment. It was among friends, it was among family. It was recognizing the fact that I'm different, but I'm still loved, and I can be that kernel of human being that is acknowledged and appreciated by people.
My nickname on the road was Shamu.
Oh, I remember that.
Jeez.
Yes,
Shamu.
Shamu, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, there was another Donna, so that was supposedly the excuse to call me Shamu. And same way, people, 10 years later, Bruce, early, yes, I'm gonna say it, still called me Shamu. And people are like, we should stop calling her that.
Well, yes.
So,
Yes.
anyway, John,
Well, I mean, I totally second what both of you said. There's no question that the need of the philosophy of Up With People is needed today, probably more than ever. But as you also said a little bit earlier, the whole environment in communications, technology, expenses. I mean, in 1965, 150 Native Americans, whites, international, singing together, traveling around the world was totally unique. There was nothing like it. And it's why it became such an explosion, because it was so unique. But there's 100 organizations like that now, and a whole bunch of other ones doing all kinds of other things, and the whole cost of everything we did is transportation, food, you know, and the tuition got so high that, you know, the original cast was just like Maury Arment, nobody paid to go. And we could do a show in a city one day and the guy could get on the bus the next morning and go on the road. So, I mean, it was a totally different situation.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't do something, but financially Up With People had a hard time for a long time.
Right.
And before this last iteration happened, I wrote a letter to the board, and I still believe in it, that 50 years is a hell of a good run, and that doesn't even include all the years from where we are.
Correct.
And so how many organizations make it for 50 years? So it's not working. Let's end it with honor
With honor.
Yeah, with honor.
and
Yep.
call it good, and don't let it just dribble out.
Yeah.
I mean, it needs to go bye-bye. And the alumni, like Pat said, are doing stuff all over the world, and that's the legacy of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
All right, so we need to end it. We have 3 minutes, and I hope that this inspires people to understand why I've been doing the videos at all, because the stories are amazing. And every time I interview somebody, I go, wow, you know. So John Parker, Mark Kazenius, Pat Glassner, Jerry Shelsta, thank you for being here today and sharing the story. I think it's important. Thank you, Brenda, off camera, for the emails, the phone calls, and putting this together. And we hope that our alumni base, and maybe others, maybe we share this with others, appreciate you being here.
Thanks so much,
Thank you
Donna.
for all you do.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for Brenda for harassing me all this time to get me to do this.